There is Max Verstappen winning the race, 4 seconds ahead of George Russell. Charles Leclerc there in third, as we said. Lewis Hamilton fourth. Sergio Perez 18 seconds behind again of his teammate. And then Fernando Alonso, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, Esteban Ocon and Lance Stroll rounding out the top 10. Question for Lawrence: could Mercedes have won the race? That's the key question.
I think, honestly, yes, I think they could have won the race. I think in Hungary, similar sort of circuit, like you said, Alex, I think that they were strong, but they weren't quite in the position to fight for the win. But I think here in the Netherlands, that hard tyre stint, when they put it on just after the Alpines did, and they showed the kind of lap time that was hauling in Max ahead and the Ferrari ahead, I think that proved that they'd managed to they'd taken a risky strategy and made it work. And ahead of the weekend on Thursday, people were joking about the fact that no one was going to use the hard tyre this weekend because there was such a step between the hard tyre and the medium tyre, more than a second, that no one thought anyone was going to use it. And then the cooler conditions came on Sunday, and we saw first Alpines gamble on it because they were going to attempt to one stop. Then we saw Mercedes do it as well. And I think in that period where Lewis was chasing Max and Max was on the hard and Lewis was on the medium, I think that Lewis would have pulled himself up and put pressure on Max. Whether or not he would have got past, I don't know. But I think we would have been in for a real treat of a battle between the two in those closing stages of the race. Obviously, as soon as the safety car allowed Max to get the soft tyres, it was basically game over, and it was kind of Abu Dhabi all over again, and there was nothing they could do. But I think the very fact that Lewis was able to put the pressure on Red Bull, and you could see that Red Bull really were under pressure to make all the right strategy calls. I think the very fact that they did that is something that bodes well for the rest of the season. But yeah, to answer your question in short, yeah, I definitely think they could have won it, and I think that's why Lewis was so frustrated on team radio at the end of the race.
Well, that was my question for Alex now. I mean, Lewis Hamilton, very frustrated. We're talking about lap 57, that safety car. They run through the pits. Lewis Hamilton doesn't stop, keeps track position. The three drivers who do of Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, and George Russell. And I think Lewis was expecting him to be rear guard, wasn't he, Lewis? Lewis, so I'm calling you Lewis now, Alex. I think Lewis was expecting George Russell to play rear guard, and that's why he was so upset. Was that reasonable, as a racing driver, is that reasonable to expect another to play rear guard?
Yeah, I would have been livid. Mercedes is having a difficult year. So while they like Red Bull, well, no, not like Red Bull actually, but while they don't like putting team orders into play, it's very clear that a win this year when they're having trouble is got to be the most overriding priority. I understand why the mistake happened, and I'll go into that in a sec. But for me, I also believe the top brass would have preferred to try and go for the win. But once you didn't have Russell playing rear guard, there's no chance, no way he was going to hold back Verstappen. But if you had Russell playing rear guard, and Russell maybe could have held off Verstappen in turn one, kept him behind for a lap, it would have allowed Hamilton to have a bit of a gap. Try to fight Verstappen when Verstappen's lost a bit of the edge on the soft tire, at least give them a chance. I still think Verstappen would have won because the advantage was such, but at least would give him a chance for Hamilton to fight with something. But he had nothing to fight with. Now, but I had a conversation about this with someone today, was the fact that I can understand why the mistake happened. Because unlike Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, they do allow the engineers a bit of autonomy, because they trust them to make the right decisions. There's a lot of faith in them. So when Russell comes on the radio and says, "Hey, when we try the soft tires," his engineer's going to be like, "Yes, absolutely, let's do the soft tires, make the call." But it would have been a really last minute call. It wouldn't have been the sort of call where you could have gone to the side and gone, "Hey, what do you guys think?" You know what I mean? So it would be like, we're making it. And of course, don't forget, the race engineers and drivers are as competitive as any driver on that grid. They're going to push it if they got a chance. So I'm not surprised they made the call. I think I applaud the engineer for trying to do the call. But I think it was just a circumstance. I think if they had a bit more time, someone there would have been like, "Hey, hang on. We need Russell there because our lead driver is going to be very vulnerable at the restart." While Mercedes would never say this, they'll say the right things. I think it was just something that happened just in the last minute. And Russell, he's pushing, right?
I want to know from you, Lawrence, you've interviewed Lewis Hamilton about 300 times probably over the last decade or so. How angry on a scale of 1 to 11 was he on Sunday after the race?
So by the time he'd got to me, he'd gone way down the scale, because I think he'd obviously had a chat to his team. I think he might have had a slight debrief where they tried to explain to him the thinking behind their strategy. And he'd calmed down a lot to the point where he was just looking at all of the positives in the TV pen. And actually, he was at his most animated that I've seen him this year. I do think he was genuine in that there is the excitement that's coming through that actually, okay, fine, he hasn't got the win that he really wants. To be honest, he hasn't even got the results that he thinks he deserves. But at the same time, he knows that he's got a car now on certain circuits. It's kind of inverted, really, because do you remember when Red Bull used to come to races and we'd say Hungary, Mexico, Brazil, Singapore, they're the circuits that they might go well at. Ironically, that's the circuits that Mercedes now might go well at. And he knows he's probably going to have 2, 3, 4 opportunities maybe this year to do it. And he backs himself. I think that's the important thing right now is he doesn't care if George is, 14 races and 15 top 5 finishes ahead of him in the championship. He just still backs himself that when he's got a car that he's capable of winning a race, he can do the better job. And I think that's what came through when I was chatting to him. He was in really high spirits once he's kind of got over that initial kind of frustration of it. Whether or not he was just putting on a good front on it, of course, I don't know. I can only just try and read what I saw in front of me. But I genuinely think he was really positive about things.